The average American checks their phone 144 times a day. That's once every 7 minutes during waking hours. And yet, 60 miles east of Los Angeles, there's a community quietly living 7 to 10 years longer than everyone else around them. Today, we're connecting three things that don't obviously belong together: screen addiction, the ancient practice of Sabbath rest, and what a small California city called Loma Linda can teach all of us about reclaiming our attention, and maybe our lives. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why your phone is engineered to be addictive, what a digital Sabbath actually is and how to do one, and how Loma Linda's longevity culture ties all of it together. I've got someone here who has really dug into all three of these threads, and I want to start with a question that's been bugging me. What is actually going on in Loma Linda?
So Loma Linda is the only blue zone in the entire United States.
And if you don't know what a blue zone is, in the early 2000s, researchers identified specific locations around the world where people live unusually long and healthy lives. Journalist Dan Buettner, working with National Geographic, eventually zeroed in on 5 of them: Okinawa in Japan, Ikaria in Greece, Sardinia in Italy, Nicoya in Costa Rica, and Loma Linda, California.
And Loma Linda is the only one in the US. That's kind of wild. It really is. And according to Harvard Health, Blue Zone residents live 7 to 10 years longer than the average American, with lower rates of chronic diseases like cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and dementia. So this isn't just anecdotal, there's real data behind it.
So what makes Loma Linda different? Is it just the diet, or is there something else happening there?
It's a combination of things. Buettner identified what he calls the Power 9 shared practices across all 5 blue zones. Things like eating a primarily plant-based diet, embracing a sense of purpose, natural movement built into daily life, and some form of daily stress relief. But what's unique to Loma Linda specifically is that it's home to a large community of Seventh-day Adventists, and they practice a weekly Sabbath rest, a full day of intentional disconnection from work and, increasingly, from screens.
So the rest isn't just a personal choice, it's a community-wide structural habit.
Exactly. And that distinction matters enormously. It's not one person trying to white-knuckle their way through a screen-free Sunday. It's an entire community doing it together, which makes it sustainable in a way that individual willpower just isn't.
I want to pause here because I think a lot of people hear Blue Zone and picture some remote island with no Wi-Fi. But Loma Linda is in Southern California, surrounded by freeways and fast food. That geographic irony is something.
Right, and that's actually what makes it so compelling as a case study. It's not like they're isolated from modern pressures. They're choosing a different way of living within the same environment everyone else is navigating.
Okay, and here's a fun detail I came across. The name Blue Zones itself. Do you know where that actually comes from?
Ha! Yes. The researchers literally circled these regions on a map with a blue marker. That's it. That's the whole origin story. One of those things that sounds almost too simple for something that became this massive global health framework.
Named with a blue Sharpie. I love that. Okay, so let's talk about the research backing this up, because it's not just Buettner's book.
No, not at all. Loma Linda University School of Public Health has been running the Adventist Health Study for over 40 years. The current phase, AHS2, has 96,000 participants and a $5.5 million NIH grant. It's one of the most comprehensive longevity data sets in the world. And separately, the Loma Linda Longevity Study specifically looks at residents over 80 across multiple ethnicities in San Bernardino and Riverside counties, examining how sleep, diet, spirituality, and healthy lifestyle connect to how long people live.
So spirituality is actually a measured variable in these studies. That's not something you usually see in mainstream health research.
It's not, and that's part of what makes the Loma Linda research so interesting. They're treating rest, community, and spiritual practice as legitimate health variables, not soft add-ons. And the data supports that framing.
Dr. Walter Willett from Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health put it pretty directly. He said, "People in blue zones are simply better at practicing behaviors that are associated with a healthier, longer life." Which sounds obvious, but the key word there is practicing. It's habitual, not occasional.
That's exactly the right read. It's not about one superfood or one hack. It's about consistent, community-reinforced rhythms. And that brings us to the part of this conversation that I think is most relevant to people right now, because those rhythms are under serious threat.
The screens.
The screens. So let's look at the actual numbers. According to Data Reportal's 2024 Global Overview, the average internet user spends approximately 6 hours and 40 minutes online every single day. And a 2023 report by reviews.org found that the average American checks their phone 144 times per day, which works out to once every 7 minutes during waking hours.
Once every 7 minutes. That's not using a phone, that's being used by one.
That's a really precise way to put it. And it connects directly to something former Google design ethicist Tristan Harris said. He described the tech industry's approach as the extraction industry of human attention. He was featured in the Netflix documentary The Social Dilemma. And his argument is that tech companies employ teams of behavioral psychologists, neuroscientists, and designers whose entire job is to make their products as addictive as possible. Harris estimates that the combined engineering talent devoted to capturing human attention represents one of the largest coordinated efforts in human history.
So it's not a personal failure, it's an engineered outcome.
Exactly. Every notification, every infinite scroll, every autoplay video, these are carefully designed mechanisms. The Path of Light guide on Digital Sabbath puts it this way: there is a war being waged for the most valuable resource you possess, and it is not your money, your time, or your talent, it is your attention. That framing shifts the whole conversation.
It does, because if it's engineered, then the solution isn't just try harder. You need a structural counter-response.
Right. And this is where I want to push back a little on the all-or-nothing framing, because screens aren't purely evil. Alison Hensley, a general pediatrician at Loma Linda University Children's Hospital, actually makes this point clearly. She says screen time can provide social support that otherwise might not be received elsewhere, and that among adolescents, social media can increase feelings of connectedness and promote more diverse friendships.
So it's not about eliminating screens, it's about the relationship you have with them.
Exactly. Positive psychology defines digital well-being as the impact of digital technologies and services on people's mental, physical, and emotional health. When that relationship is healthy, technology fits into your life and you stay in control. When it's not, the technology is running you. And Hensley is also clear that excessive screen use increases childhood obesity, cardiometabolic disease, sleep disruption, and mental health problems. So the stakes are real.
And this is where the Sabbath concept comes in as something more than just a religious practice.
Yes. So the word Sabbath comes from the Hebrew Shabbat, which literally means to cease, rest, or desist. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, it's both a divine command and a gift, an invitation to pause from labor and consumption. And the Bible analysis source on Sabbath theology makes this striking comparison. The digital ecosystem today can function like a modern-day pharaoh, demanding our attention and fragmenting our sense of self. The Sabbath was originally God's radical gift of freedom, a day when the cycle of production and oppression ceased.
That's a pretty bold frame. Your phone as pharaoh.
It is bold, but it's also kind of accurate when you think about how compulsive the relationship has become.
And the key distinction that Colorado Christian University makes is that a digital Sabbath is not the same as a secular digital detox. A detox is about productivity, getting more done by taking a break. A digital Sabbath is, as CCU puts it, an intentional spiritual practice to reconnect with yourself, others, and God. The motivation is fundamentally different.
So one is a performance optimization strategy, and the other is an act of resistance against a system that's trying to own your attention. That's a really clean way to put it. And the CCU piece also says the Sabbath invites us to pause, not out of obligation, but as an act of grace and freedom. That reframing from duty to gift is actually what makes it sustainable. You're not punishing yourself, you're giving yourself something.
Okay, so practically speaking, what does a digital Sabbath actually look like? Because I think a lot of people hear this and immediately think, I can't do that. I have emails, I have responsibilities.
The Screen Addiction Calculator guide on this is really practical. First, you pick a consistent day. Most people choose Sunday because it aligns with traditional rest days, but the guide is clear that any day works. Someone they mentioned does Wednesday digital Sabbaths because midweek burnout hits them hardest. The key is consistency, not conformity.
Consistency over conformity. I like that.
Then you announce it. You tell friends, family, co-workers that you'll be unreachable. Set up auto-replies. And the night before, you prepare alternatives, physical books, board games, cooking, gardening, hiking. The guide says these things become surprisingly appealing when your phone isn't competing for your attention. And here's the part that I think is most honest. The first hour feels like you've forgotten something crucial. But by hour 4 or 5, the mental fog lifts.
Hour 4 or 5. So there's a real adjustment period.
There is. And that adjustment period is actually evidence of how deep the dependency runs. Your nervous system has been conditioned to expect constant stimulation. Giving it permission to actually rest takes time. But the research on rest breaks, a 2023 study published in the International Archives of Occupational and Environmental Health, found that taking breaks outside was specifically associated with positive changes in well-being. Not just any break, outside breaks.
Which is also very Loma Linda. The Power 9 includes natural, vigorous movement, gardening, walking. It's not a gym membership, it's just being outside.
Exactly, and the Blue Zone's research from the Blue Zone's website makes this point about centenarians. They live life in ways that support holistic well-being, prioritizing whole foods, maintaining rich relationships, and moving their bodies by gardening or walking. No extreme interventions, just consistent embedded habits.
And the Loma Linda community does this together. That's the part that I keep coming back to. It's not one person trying to be disciplined in isolation.
That's the structural piece that most digital wellness advice misses. The Christian Mental Health Initiative piece on Screen Sabbaths talks about creating tech-free zones in the home, the dining room, bedrooms, and engaging in shared activities like family devotions, outdoor activities, board games. It's a community practice, not a solo discipline.
And when it's a community practice, you're not fighting against social pressure, you're supported by it.
Right, which is exactly why Loma Linda works as a model. The Adventist community there has built an environment where the healthy choice is also the socially normal choice. That's incredibly rare.
Let me push on something, though. There's a counter-argument here that the digital Sabbath is a privilege. Not everyone can just go offline for a day. Some people work multiple jobs, have on-call responsibilities, or live in situations where being unreachable isn't an option.
That's a fair and important pushback. And I think the honest answer is that the full 24-hour version isn't accessible to everyone equally, but the principle scales. The positive psychology piece on digital well-being makes the point that in the modern world, it's unlikely we can completely detox from digital technologies. They're integrated into everyday life. So the goal is mindful use, not elimination. Even a few intentional hours of disconnection, consistently practiced, is a meaningful shift.
So it's less about the specific format and more about the intention behind it.
Exactly. The positive psychology definition of digital well-being is the impact of digital technologies and services on people's mental, physical, and emotional health. When you're engaging purposefully and intentionally while remaining emotionally balanced, technology fits into your life. The moment it starts running your life, that's when you need the structural intervention, whatever form that takes for your situation.
And Loma Linda University Health actually has a program that operationalizes this, the Health 180 program. It's a 10-week intensive lifestyle change program that covers nutrition, sleep, physical activity, relationships, and stress management as a whole person approach.
Yes, and what's notable about that program is that it explicitly treats lifestyle change as a whole person journey, not a narrow checklist. Past participants have seen measurable improvements in weight, blood pressure, blood glucose control, and cholesterol, but also gains in energy, mood, motivation, and confidence. The physical and the psychological are treated as inseparable.
Which mirrors what the Loma Linda longevity study is actually measuring: sleep, diet, spirituality, and healthy lifestyle as interconnected predictors of how long you live. And that's the thread that ties all of this together. The Adventist Health Study, 40 years, 96,000 participants, NIH-funded, has produced findings like vegetarian diets reducing cancer risk, nuts reducing cardiovascular disease, and ultra-processed foods being associated with higher mortality. But the lifestyle isn't just about food. It's about the whole rhythm of how you live, including when you stop.
When you stop. That's actually the most countercultural part of all of this, isn't it?
In a culture that treats busyness as a status symbol, choosing to stop on purpose regularly is almost radical.
The Bible analysis piece on Sabbath theology says exactly that. Sabbath rest is a countercultural act that resists the idolatry of endless work, achievement, and busyness. By setting aside time to rest, individuals acknowledge the inherent value of simply being, not producing, not optimizing, just being.
And that's the mercy part of the Sabbath that I think gets lost in the productivity conversation. It's not just a strategy, it's a form of self-compassion built into the calendar.
That's a really important reframe. The CCU piece describes the Sabbath as an act of grace and freedom. Grace, meaning you don't have to earn the rest, it's given. And in the context of screen addiction, where the guilt cycle of I should put my phone down but I can't is so common, That framing of rest as mercy rather than discipline is genuinely different.
Rest as mercy, not rest as reward for productivity.
Right. And I think that's why the Loma Linda model is so durable. It's not built on willpower. It's built on a community that has collectively decided that rest is sacred. And that decision is reinforced every single week by the people around you.
Alfreda Connor, the Health Ministries Director at the Central States Conference, said something in the Adventist Health Study materials that stuck with me. Faith and health is a good partnership, and the way people focus on health, diet, and exercise is a new fountain of youth. We have the obligation to learn to be healthy.
That phrase, the obligation to learn to be healthy, is interesting because it frames health as something you actively pursue and study, not just something that happens to you. And the Adventist community in Loma Linda has been doing that for decades, which is why the research coming out of there is so rich.
And the research is ongoing. The AHS2 study is still running right now, so we're still learning from this community in real time.
Which is remarkable. 40 plus years of longitudinal data on a community that practices these habits consistently. That's an incredibly rare data set. And what it keeps confirming is that the variables that matter most, diet, sleep, spirituality, community, rest, are all modifiable. You can change them.
That's actually the most hopeful part of this whole conversation. These aren't genetic advantages, they're behavioral ones.
Exactly. Dr. Willett from Harvard said it plainly. People in blue zones are simply better at practicing behaviors that are associated with a healthier, longer life. The word practicing is doing a lot of work there. Practice implies repetition, community, and intention, not perfection.
Not perfection. That's important, because I think a lot of people hear digital Sabbath or blue zone lifestyle and immediately feel like they're already failing because they can't do it perfectly.
And the Screen Addiction Calculator Guide addresses that directly. It says starting a digital Sabbath begins with preparation, not perfection. You can't just go cold turkey without a plan. That's like deciding to run a marathon without training. The goal is to build the habit gradually, consistently, and with support from the people around you.
Preparation, not perfection. I think that's the most actionable thing we've said today.
And it connects back to the Loma Linda model in a really direct way. The community there didn't build a longevity culture overnight. It's been practiced, refined, and reinforced over generations. The Adventist Health Study has been running for over 40 years precisely because the habits are stable enough to study longitudinally.
So when you step back from all of this, the screen data, the Sabbath theology, the blue zone research, what does it actually come down to?
Here's what I think this really comes down to. The people living the longest in the United States aren't doing anything mystical. They're eating mostly plants, moving their bodies naturally, building genuine community, and, critically, they stop once a week, on purpose, together. That rhythm of work and rest isn't just spiritual wisdom. It's backed by decades of public health research, and the digital Sabbath is the modern translation of that ancient practice.
And the reason it matters now more than ever is that the forces working against that rhythm have never been more sophisticated. Tech companies with teams of behavioral psychologists engineering your compulsion, that's a real adversary.
It is. And Tristan Harris's framing, the extraction industry of human attention, is worth sitting with. Your attention is being mined. The question is whether you're going to let that happen by default or whether you're going to build a structure that protects it. Loma Linda built that structure into their community calendar. You can build it into yours.
And the research on rest breaks, the 2023 study in the International Archives of Occupational and Environmental Health, found that breaks taken outside were specifically associated with positive well-being changes. So even the science is pointing toward the same thing. Get outside, disconnect, let your nervous system breathe.
The convergence of the spiritual tradition, the longevity research, and the digital well-being science is actually pretty striking. They're all pointing in the same direction. Rest is not a luxury, it's a health variable, and treating it as one, the way Loma Linda does, changes outcomes in measurable ways.
So here's the actionable piece for anyone listening. Pick one day or even one afternoon this week. Tell the people in your life you'll be unreachable. Prepare something analog the night before, and then just stop. Not forever, not perfectly, just once, on purpose.
And notice what happens around hour 4 or 5. The Screen Addiction Calculator Guide says the mental fog lifts. That fog is the baseline you've been living in. You just can't see it until it clears.
We open this episode with the fact that the average American checks their phone 144 times a day. The people living the longest in the United States built an entire community around the radical idea of stopping once a week on purpose together. That's not a wellness trend. That's a 40-year NIH-funded 96,000-person argument for rest. And maybe the most countercultural thing you can do right now is just put the phone down. Thanks for listening to Copilot Podcasts.